3, 2, 1.
Glowing Up Latina, Season 3, Episode 20.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Glowing Up Latina.
Hello.
Hi, everyone.
I'm Christina,
I'm Amanda.
and today we are here with Elizabeth Sanchez, licensed marriage and family therapist. Elizabeth, say hello, please.
Hello. I'm so excited to be here.
We're so happy to have you, Elizabeth.
Thank
Yes, we
you.
are. We're concluding our month of love here on the podcast, and Amanda and I thought, what better way to round that out than to speak with an expert in relationships.
So exciting. So exciting. And you guys can call me Liz. Elizabeth is so formal. So we're all friends here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Of course.
So how are you doing today, Liz?
I'm doing well here in California where we're getting tons and tons of rain. Tons. So we're spoiled here. We usually have the nice sunny weather, but it has not stopped raining.
Oh, wow.
It's been like that for a while, right?
Yeah, lots of flooding, but at least where I'm at, we've been okay. But I miss my son. I love the sun. I love to be outdoors, and we're not used to this. Do you guys get this weather in New York? A lot of rain?
So there was a period, maybe like about 2 or 3 months ago, where every weekend was just constant rain. So we, after a long week, 9 to 5, we look forward to our weekends and want to be out and, have some fun. And it was always a rainy weekend for like
Like
Um,
2
six
months?
weekends, 2 months.
Yeah.
So yeah, so like I was gonna say 6 weekends, six to 8 weekends in a row of just rain.
Everybody was very
yeah.
excited when it stopped raining, though.
Very
I
much.
bet. I'm just over here complaining. But yes, besides that, I'm very, I'm having a good day. I'm really excited to be here. I saw some of the questions that you both sent over, and I was like, wow, I'm like really excited to talk about this topic. Relationships, love, especially since it's, the month of love. So I'm really, really excited. Thank you for having me once again.
Yes, of course. And thank you for agreeing to be on. I reached out to Elizabeth. I found her on Latinx Therapy. We had the founder of Latinx Therapy on our show previously. And when I was looking for a therapist to come on the show and, kind of help Amanda and I fill out this month of love, I don't know, something about your website just spoke to me. And I was like, let me just send an email. I honestly did not think that I was going to get a response back because, therapists are so busy. Everybody has so many
Mm-hmm.
clients, and we hear all the time about how overwhelmed therapists are. But it was very nice of you to respond. I'm very grateful. Thank you so much.
Of course. When I got your email, I instantly, definitely looked you guys up, and I just really loved the mission. Two Latinas talking about all things Latinas, and I was like, why not? If I can support my fellow Latinas out there trying to make a difference, why not? And I appreciate the flowers around really enjoying my website or just kind of my profile on the directory. So I love the topic. I know that you mentioned a little bit in like the email. So I was like, yeah, let's do this. Let's talk about this.
Oh, love it. Love it. Love it. Love it.
Yeah. So for our listeners, could you please introduce yourselves a little bit? Tell us a little about you and your background.
Absolutely. So I know you meant my name is Elizabeth, but you can call me Liz. I am a licensed marriage and family therapist in the state of California. I am also, and I know we'll probably dive into it a little later, but I am an EMDR approved consultant and therapist. I'm also a mother. I am the eldest daughter of immigrant parents, first gen. I'm a wife, and I have a 2.5-year-old. He's about to turn 3 next month. So he takes up a lot of my time, a lot of it, but in a good way, in the best way possible. I am also a healer, a creative, and an entrepreneur. I launched my private practice in 2019 and started off as a group practice with another colleague of mine. And last year was the first year in which I decided to branch away and became my own boss and started Calidad Holistic Wellness and Therapy. So I own my own private practice, and I also decided to take on the adventure, and I launched my own podcast as well called Cafecito y Calidad Podcast, where we have quality conversations over coffee, and we interview individuals who are not only therapists, but people who are, really breaking those multi-generational cycles. I've interviewed Latin-owned coffee shops because I am a big coffee enthusiast. So I really love supporting my community. Christina mentioned somebody when we were talking about a coffee shop, so I'm definitely gonna make sure to check them out. But I love coffee. It's a strong connection to my roots, my ancestors, my relationship with my grandmother, and it's like, chisme and cafecito, right? So let's just add a little mental health twist to it. So I have that. I also have a Instagram live series called Healing Through Conversations, where I have different people in the field where they talk about their areas of expertise. So I do that, and I also provide private practice consultation for those therapists who are looking to become their own boss and start their own practices. I also provide EMDR consultation for those therapists who are wanting to get either EMDR certified. And for those of you who don't know what EMDR is, it's a eye movement desensitization and reprocessing therapy. But I provide therapists who are interested in getting certified or becoming consultants themselves. So I provide them with that support. But one of my areas of expertise is working with the Latinx community, also the BIPOC community, those folks who are first gen or just really looking towards breaking those multi-generational cycles, working on healing from their complex traumas and wanting to change for the next generation. So I love all that, and I'm sure I'll share a little bit more as we have this conversation.
You're so accomplished. I think that deserves a round of applause.
Ah,
Yes.
thank you. I'll
Yes.
take it.
And so for the EMDR, can you kind of explain what it is a little bit and how it differs from other modalities that are provided by different therapists?
Yes, absolutely. So EMDR, like I mentioned before, I love to work with folks who are struggling with trauma, complex trauma. So with EMDR, it started off as a modality that we often saw with veterans. Like, oh, if you saw veterans, you're probably doing EMDR. So EMDR, once again, it's eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. It's a therapy that was founded by Francine Shapiro. And so there's a famous story. She was walking at the park. She was diagnosed with cancer. She was walking at the park and she started doing eye movements. And she realized that, wow, when I think about the cancer and I walk, the distress level goes down. And that was kind of the way that EMDR started. It's since then it's evolved tremendously. She's no longer with us, but it's evolved in so many ways. You can utilize EMDR with all different people with all different backgrounds and struggling with all different issues. But EMDR is different in that with trauma, you don't really need to talk about the traumatic experience in order to heal. We use bilateral stimulation, which is either tapping or eye movements, which we go back and forth, and we reprocess traumatic experiences so that we're no longer kind of stuck in certain situations. So I like to give the example of it's almost like when you have a phone or a computer and it's glitching because it's like on overload. There's a lot of different files on there. So what we're doing with EMDR is we're looking at those files, we're processing them, putting them away correctly. So that way it leaves room for other experiences to come through. So with clients usually come to me as they've been in therapy, potentially just, traditional talk therapy, and they're like, I just can't work through this specific issue. So they come to me and we work on getting unstuck through EMDR. We create a whole treatment plan for them, and usually it works really quickly, depending on the issue. But we really dive in deep and look at those unprocessed experiences that haven't been digested. And clients usually are able to work through them and they're able to see a different type of future, or maybe a future they hadn't been able to see before. It does require training. I started my journey maybe 2018, 2019, and I fell in love, and I've had it done myself personally, and it's changed my life. So I am a strong advocate for it.
And was it kind of like you had it done and you were like, oh, wow, I need to be
Mhm.
showing other people like this can work?
So when I was doing my master's program, I don't work with kids, but I wanted to work with children when I was doing my master's. So I did we had to do our thesis, and I was looking at different treatment modalities that were effective for kiddos who had experienced lots of traumatic experiences. So I was like, EMDR kept coming up. And like it was like we consider it the gold standard, like the to go to therapy model. Research showed that it was like it's so effective, and I just fell in love with it. So I was like, I'm gonna get trained in that one day. And I did. And when we did our training, you actually have to, you get broken up into groups and you actually get to experience it right there and then. And within that same day, because it's a 3-day training, 2 3-day trainings, I noticed a difference right away within me and the way I was viewing things and my relationships. I was like, okay, there's something to this. But it is different than your traditional talk therapy is that once again, you don't have to talk about the trauma. Like as long as you can see the experiences coming up. And a lot of people like that because especially within our BIPOC or Latinx community, we don't always want to talk about what happened to us. So clients are like, wow, I don't have to share. Hey, I'll do it. So that's one of the things that makes it different. It also like we incorporate eye movements. With traditional talk therapy, it is more the talking back and forth. With EMDR, you can tap, there's tappers, you can sway. There's different ways that you can incorporate bilateral. The most traditional is eyes, and you start seeing, for the most part, like changes rather quickly.
Oh, wow.
It's like really fast. Like I sometimes like an issue that you may be working on, maybe that might take years and other different treatment modalities, it might not take as long. But once again, it just depends what you're focusing on. Cause some clients will come to me. It's like an onion, like, oh, this is now coming up. Oh, this other thing's coming up. And I tell clients, like, there might be blocked memories in there that you probably weren't even aware of that may pop up because we're clearing out some of that trauma that's been keeping you stuck. And some clients are like, wow, like shocked at some of the things that they had blocked away for a very long time.
Yeah, but also, having this type of modality, having this type of option to work through their trauma, but without having to also express, like we said, Latinx community, we know we're very known to not want to discuss and express our
Yes.
feelings. So to have this outlet with, tapping and eye movements to work through their traumas, this is the first time that I've heard about this type of modality. And I always, everyone's like this, I guess, so used to hearing the talk type of therapy, but this one, this actually speaks volumes, and like, what, people can really like look into if you're not ready to discuss, your feelings and your trauma.
Yeah, it's really powerful. And it's like some people, it's even like somatic, meaning body.
Mm-hmm.
Like you don't even need to have the memory, but as long as you're feeling the sensations, like, hey, let's just notice that because your body keeps the score. Like, really. So, all these memories that are stored in your body, I really don't need to hear it. Right. And it gives the client power and they have choice. And this, if we ever were to dive into it, like, this is ancestral stuff that our ancestors have been doing. We see like, the circles, the dancing circles, and dancing together and processing the drums, right? Like the dancing back and forth. These are all things that our ancestors did. And now it's just kind of showing up in this treatment modality.
Oh, wow. That is really cool. And I'm interested to hear how that kind of how using this modality works with being like a licensed marriage and family therapist, or are they kind of like just like separate?
No, they actually they're hand in hand. So as a therapist, we can kind of decide what different treatment modalities you want to specialize in. And I decided I wanted to specialize in EMDR. And because I am able to use it with so many different clients. So I tell myself I'm like a trauma healer. Like it's all interconnected. So I decided like, you know what, this is going to be my area. I love this work and I love using it with the BIPOC and Latinx community because it just works so well. Like it's very much body sensations. You don't have to share. It reduces the shame. So many great things. So there's licensed clinical social workers and marriage and family therapists that can specialize in it. So but there's also another like amazing therapy models out there too. Yes, I just love this one.
It sounds like it. You do sound very passionate about it.
uh,
Makes me very excited about it.
Thank you. Thank you.
And okay, so could you kind of explain what exactly a licensed marriage and family therapist is? Because you have,
Mhm,
your name, and then you get to put the letters, the acronym after
mhm.
it, which is always so cool to have accomplished as a Latinx Latina woman.
Yes. So a licensed marriage and family therapist is so I have my bachelor's in psychology and I decided to pursue my master's in marriage and family therapist. So what that means is we focus more on relationships. So it's not just marriage or couples, it's anything that has to do with relationships. So this could be friendships, this can be family, this can be couples, this can be sibling relationships. So we view the lens from a relationship perspective. So we also look at not that other, like licensed clinical social workers don't, they're more like on the social community. We see the relationship. So I went to school for about 3 years and I got my master's and I had to complete about 3,000 hours of clinical hours. So I saw clients, I saw kids, I saw families, I saw couples. I had to do multiple trainings. I had to get continuation education. I had to um, see a supervisor. So there was different things I had to do, and I had to take two tests. I
Mhm.
took a law and ethics test as well as a
Okay.
clinical test, and then once I passed those, I was able to practice on my own. And so I didn't have to be with a supervisor to kind of guide me through things. I still seek consultation, of course, from colleagues, but I think I got licensed 2000. I graduated 2015. It took me about 2.5 years to complete my hours. So it was a long journey. And so if somebody's interested in maybe working with the licensed marriage and family therapist, we work with all different types of mental health issues as well. So depression, PTSD, anxiety, even if you just have like a life transition that you're going through, or you're having issues with your partner, your relationship, or with your family, we focus on all these different things. We all specialize in different areas. But kind of in a nutshell, that's kind of what a licensed marriage and family therapist is.
Okay, and I love the piece that you said about like focusing on relationships because we talk about it a
Mhm,
lot here on the podcast about how kind of our existence as Latina women, a lot of it is like, oh, what is the word that I'm looking for? Like centered around our relationships to other people and
mm,
the ways that we're expected to show up for other
Mhm.
people and kind of be responsible for other people.
right.
So I think it's really great that you mentioned that because
Mhm.
hopefully somebody will hear and be like, oh, well, I need to talk to somebody about my relationship with so and so.
Yeah, and I like that you brought that up because I think when they hear marriage and family therapist, it's like, oh, I don't have marital issues. I don't have like family issues, but I am struggling with anxiety. Absolutely, we can work with you. Yes.
So, through your practice, what kind of services do you offer and do you provide to people who might be interested in working with you?
So I offer individual. So my specialty is working with individual clients. However, I do integrate like family work as well as couples work. So I do a little bit of all of that. So I offer individual, I offer in person as well as virtual. So I was limited to the area where I was at before COVID. So my office is in Whittier, California. But now, as long as they're in California, we jump on a call and we're able to have a session, which is wonderful. So those are some of the services that I offer, just I guess from a mental health perspective. I help other colleagues in other areas, but for clients who are interested, I offer those.
And then I guess kind of my last question before we move on to our
Sure.
Q&A portion.
Yes.
As a therapist, and you're a mom and an entrepreneur, and you have all these like other tags that you have, and which means
Mhm.
other responsibilities that you have. How do you take care of yourself? Like, how do you prioritize your mental health?
That's a great question because I'm just going to be honest. I think this is something that as therapists we continuously struggle with. We preach it with our clients and we try to model it, but we have to really check in with each other. So I think one of the ways is I have a really tight group of colleagues and friends that we're always checking in with each other. I think with the pandemic and we were also flooded, I think there was a level of burnout that we experienced. We were holding a lot of people's stories and their struggles while also navigating the pandemic that I think it really put into perspective the need for us to take care of ourselves. So
Mhm.
I think just really checking in with each other. I value community. And so I have dear friends of mine where I'm like, hey, I'm really struggling today. I had a really long day. And they just provide, they hold space. And I think therapists are like some of the coolest friends to have because they're like, they're not trying to give you advice. They're like, okay, well, how was that? Your tradition. How did that make you feel? So it's sometimes just really nice to just call somebody and just vent. So I use my community. I also, once again, I love coffee. So I think one of the ways that I've incorporated my self-care is through my podcast by going to different coffee shops. I love, love, love trying new shops, trying different coffees, trying like taking friends to like we're just commingling, connecting. I
Mhm.
love the vibe. So I do that. I also am an athlete, so I work out. I love, love. So I have a gym. It's like an Olympic lifting gym. And it's a little like CrossFit, but not CrossFit. They don't like to be considered CrossFit gyms. So, but I love to weight lift. It's a good way for me to release stress. And I am able to build on my strength. And I go in
Mhm.
the mornings, I go at 6 a.m. And that's the way I get my day started. And I do really enjoy hiking as well. So that's fun. I just dedicated to going on one solo hike a week because my nervous system is always so overly stimulated with being a
Mhm.
mom, a wife,
Right.
and therapist. I go once a week and I'm like, I just need to be alone, put my headphones on and decompress. And I think that's been very helpful because I just sometimes don't want to talk. Don't want to talk. I just want to just be and just enjoy nature. I do have two dogs, so they have been really great. They're two Australian cattle dogs that one of them is in here with me right now. So they're very therapeutic. They help me ground, and my husband's a great support system too.
Mhm.
So those are some of the things, and music. Oh, my last one, music and dancing. I love me some good music.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that with us. I actually, in listening to you talk, I did get one more question. I'm so sorry, you guys, and then we'll
Oh.
move on. But, as a therapist, like, how do you kind of, or can you, I guess, like, ever really turn that switch off and kind of like, just like, I guess with your friends, like, when they're kind of talking to you about things, like,
Mm.
can you turn your brain off in that way?
That's why they always recommend have your therapy friends, but have friends that are not in the field. And I think that's what I get out of the gym is that I actually don't tell anybody that I'm a therapist
Nice.
there. Cause I'm like, you know what? Like, 'cause I'm gonna say, like, once you tell somebody you're a therapist, so the memes are true. So let me tell you about what happened to me. So I think I learned to have really good boundaries and where I am selective as to who I share, who I'm a therapist with, and who I don't, because I do sometimes just want to focus on things that are not therapy related, but there are some things that are hard to kind of shut down, like healthy relationships. And I know we're going to talk about all that, but like healthy relationships, boundaries, communication. And I think that I'm in a part of my journey where I'm still in therapy, and my therapist and I just had this conversation where I'm in like the restructuring phase of my life where what that means is that I've done a lot of my trauma work, and
Mm,
now I'm like restructuring what this new chapter of my life is. And it's a little exhausting because you're always so self-aware and you're building this new muscle where you're like, okay, where maybe it took me a little bit longer to set a boundary. Now I'm setting it a lot sooner.
mm,
And I do have to be very consistent in this new phase of life with what I'm doing, like speaking up more, using my voice. So I shut it off, but I also like have to still keep some of it on. And because it is relevant in the relationships and in my life. So
right.
I just learning to navigate it, I think is my best answer. Like, I don't know.
We're all about navigating here and trying to figure out what life throws at us.
Yeah, I don't
Finding
like the
that
word balance. I don't
balance.
like the word
That's what I was
balance.
about to. Oh, you don't like the word balance?
I'm sorry, I don't. The reason I don't like balance, I use navigate because I feel like we're like always trying to figure out like some things might be helpful in one area and
Mhm,
some things might not. I just feel like it's like a boat. Like,
mhm.
we're swaying through life where I think balance, there's this high expectation to
Equal
always
everything out and
equal
just
out.
yeah.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, and it puts less pressure on me to like have every part of my life balanced. Where I'm like, that's not realistic. Like, I'm gonna like be stressed out a lot of the time, but like,
Yeah.
how can I navigate this? How
Mm,
can I make this a little bit less bumpy for me?
right.
Because when I was using the word balance, I feel like I was just like there was this like negative belief about myself that I wasn't doing it right. I was a failure. I'm not good enough. And I had to like once again reshift and I'm restructuring my life where I'm like, things are not always gonna be okay, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, a lot for me to think about after we done with episode.
There's some stuff at you, Christina.
I know. I have therapy on Thursday. I'm gonna be like, look, we gotta talk about this.
Let's throw out balance.
Okay, you guys, we're gonna get to our Q&A portion of the episode. You guys
Yes.
really turned out for us in submitting questions. Amanda and I also thought of some questions to add into here, and we are just so excited. I do want to make a brief disclaimer. The answers that Liz provides are in no way meant to replace therapy or need for therapeutic services. They don't create a therapist-patient relationship with
Yep.
you, our listener, and Liz. The answers to the questions are general information for educational purposes. So please, if you're interested in therapy, reach out. But I just wanted to say that before we get started.
Wonderful.
Okay, our first question we have here. I'm interested in therapy, but don't know how or if I should talk to my family about it. I also don't really understand the point, if I'm being honest. Do you just talk about your problems and the therapist listens?
I think this was a really great question when I was kind of, reflecting on it. I think that it's a personal choice. I think it's really exciting that this individual is considering therapy or even just entertaining the idea. I think that's usually the first step, or just even considering it. I think something to keep in mind is that therapy is confidential, is that unless there are specific reasons why we need to break confidentiality, whether there's suicidal or homicidal ideation or abuse happening, everything's kept between the therapist and the client. And I think that's what makes it a lot different than just talking to a friend, is that it is a safe, non-judgmental space where even as therapists, we don't provide advice. I think that there is this big misconception
Mm,
where, oh, I'm going to go and I'm going to get all this advice and we're going to be good, when we really don't. We guide and support. As far as talking to your family about it, I always share with clients, sometimes it's important to do a little bit of the healing first before maybe sharing with your family, because
mm,
like you're healing a wound or wounds that are probably been very infected for a very long time, and some of those wounds may be connected to family. So why not maybe take some time? You can obviously share with your family, but sometimes taking the time to heal some of those wounds and then reintegrating and inviting family in, it's not going to be as activating if they don't have a positive response to you being in therapy. But obviously, it's personal choice. But that's what I kind of share with clients. I don't want to have you get re-traumatized as we're still working on some of
Mhm.
the trauma.
That makes a
Yeah,
lot of sense.
it
Yeah.
does make a lot of
That makes a
sense.
lot of sense. Yeah.
You know yourself more than anybody else does. That's why we don't, as therapists, we don't give advice because we want you to be able to individuate, become your own person,
Mm.
and listen to your own intuition. And if you do decide to want to share with your family, maybe considering boundaries, how much you want to share with them, right? About therapy. You don't have to share everything, but hey, I just started this process. I'll keep you updated, or I'll keep you posted, or I won't.
See, along with
So
along with navigating, we're also about boundaries too.
oh, I love that. They're hard, but I love them.
Yeah, they are hard.
Yes.
Okay, our next question says, how do I encourage my brother, who is also first gen, to seek therapy due to our generational trauma and tell him that going to therapy doesn't mean you're weak or soft? I feel as if he has a lot of unresolved father-son issues, as well as the machismo in him that deaf comes out, and we feel that it resembles how our father used to be. How can I help him with issues that he keeps bottled up and doesn't talk to anyone about?
So I think this is also, these are great questions. So I think this is a big one where I would just encourage to meet your brother where he's at. That it might be that therapy may come down the line, but is it that we connect your brother to a men's support group or some sort of men's social hour? And the reason I bring up social hours, I have a dear friend of mine who he's not a therapist by all means, he's an electrician. And he is working with men in battling machismo. And what he does is he has men's social hours where they get together and they talk about issues around machismo, relationships, commitment. So, but it's not therapy. So I think that coming from a male's perspective, sometimes it doesn't always start with it. Maybe that is something that he will eventually warm up to and just be on there for him, offering resources as they come. And if he is ready to start, then maybe guide and support him. But sometimes when we want to push, or maybe there's parts of us that want to caretake, sometimes those individuals will push away. So I would just, once again, meet him where he's at, see what he's open to, and let him guide you in whatever feels right for him. Because being a male in therapy is so rare, so hard. So just the fact that, hey, maybe there's an openness to a group of some sort or something, I think is a step in the right direction.
I think I saw you share that on your Instagram. Okay, I might get the name wrong. Juan Carlos, was that? Yes,
Yeah, my dear
okay.
Juan Carlos, the modern macho. Shout out to my dear friend. We do a lot of collaborations together because he's just doing great work within the male community. Like he really is motivated to combat machismo and support his work. I think he's helped. We've had a lot of great conversations on my podcast as well as Instagram where we talk about like his relationship has helped me with my own father wound
Mm.
and his ability to model vulnerability, model safety, model like his own struggles and how he didn't even want to be in therapy at one point. So sometimes like that's what men need, is to see somebody that has been through it. So
Mm.
yes, just somebody to keep in mind, really good resource.
And of course, you guys, we will link Elizabeth's Instagram page and we'll link the Modern Macho in our show notes. So be sure to check them out.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, this next question, I'll own up to this next question. This next question is definitely from me.
All right, let's hear it.
The phrase generational trauma, it's used a lot nowadays, pretty much
Mm.
everywhere, I feel like. Can you explain what that actually means and how it's different from just like regular quote unquote trauma?
Yes. So trauma in itself is when we experience a very stressful or frightening, distressing event of some sort. It changes our nervous system. So, generational trauma is trauma that's been passed down from one generation to the next. So, what that looks like is that can look like substance abuse, abuse in general, parenting styles, mental health issues that's directly connected to our ancestors. And it typically takes 3 generations to break a cycle. And what I'm seeing is our generation right now are those cycle breakers of those multi-generational trauma that has been passed down from our families.
Yeah, we discussed that a lot too, also on the podcast. As Christina said, she owned up to this question. I think coming into this too, coming in, when creating and coming up with topics for the podcast, we felt like the one thing that stuck out to us was generational trauma, because Christina and I found some commonalities there, how we were raised and how our families, again, share commonalities with when it comes to generational trauma. So with that, I feel like our generation is trying to fight and come out of that, just to seek better, opportunities, like how to approach things in a
Mhm.
safer way.
Mhm.
So, yeah, super challenging, but we're out here trying to
We're
overcome
doing
it.
it.
Yeah.
We're doing it. Yes. And, multi-generational trauma is also attachment styles, the ways that we
Yeah.
navigate our relationships. If we're a little bit more anxious to be in relationships, we can probably link that to your parents and your grandparents and so on and so forth. So I think going back to that generational is really what it means, like our ancestors passing these things down and our generation saying this is enough
Right.
and let's do something different, and it's hard. So for those of you who are doing it, you both are doing it, kudos to you, because it's hard to be the cycle breaker in the family.
Right, exactly. And then, going back to that, we see it, with family. So, which brings us to like the next question. How do you think our trauma plays a role in our relationships, and how do we keep it from being detrimental in all areas of our life?
Yeah, so I think that's you guys are killing it with these questions. So I think that trauma plays a role, and it goes back to, once again, like that attachment style. So depending on am a strong believer that our parents are our first role models. And I definitely think they model a lot to us, the good and the bad and all the in between. So I think that really, and I think this is where, whether it's therapy, a spiritual group, whatever you decide to go, I think really becoming aware of those patterns is so important, because they are the first template, right? So we are easily going to be drawn to people that are familiar to us, AKA our parents, what we saw, what we witnessed. And I think in therapy, we're able to kind of explore and dissect those relationships so that we can see, what parts of the relationship with my parents do I love and what parts don't I love? And what do I want to continue moving forward in my life? And that can be a very hard process, because it's having to kind of step back. And in our Latinx community, there's a lot of shame in having to look at our relationship with our parents, because we don't talk about our parents. We keep that inside and we shove it away. And that's why that generational trauma continues.
Hmm.
But that's why we have to step in and we explore it. And I tell clients, our parents did the best they could and we can love them wholeheartedly, but there are some areas that maybe they fell short in. And those are the areas that we need to heal. And I think that if we don't do that, that's how we continue to enter unhealthy and abusive relationships, because there's no self-awareness. We're drawn to things that are familiar. We're going to enter relationships that maybe resemble those of our parents and continue. So I think that working on self-awareness, working on breaking those cycles in therapy, in spiritual groups, and whatever that might be, is so helpful so that we can enter healthier and loving relationships.
Absolutely. Yeah, just recognizing, right, those generational, again, cycles, what to find in, I guess, a new relationship, or especially, I guess, which comes to my next question, dating. So, what are some healthy ways to navigate dating and forming connections after a long period of being single? Some background here. As context, I'm a 30-year-old female who hasn't been in a long-term relationship for a couple of years, nor dated. I
Mhm.
would constantly make excuses of I don't have time for that, but I'm currently at a place where my mental and physical health have started to improve. I'm very comfortable with who I am and what I bring to the table, but I'm scared that because I have been single for so long, I wouldn't know how to share myself with someone else when the time comes.
So first of all, dating since the pandemic has changed so much. My heart goes out to those who are dating because I hear it with my client. I see it with my friends. Dating is it's so complex now. There's so many apps. The amount of access that we have to meeting people, it's overly stimulating. I think it's overly stimulating our nervous system. And there's this idea of, well, if this one doesn't work out, then I'm just going to go to this one. And there's this instant gratification around always kind of just dating. So I think for somebody such as this individual, I would say, first of all, just take it slow. Like, especially since been on your own, haven't really had much exposure, just start by somewhere, whether it's downloading an app or going out with a friend and slowly going from there. Because I think there is this expectation of like, I'm going to start dating and I'm going to get in a relationship right away.
Mm.
And like, we romanticize the dating experience, where I would just say, take your time, get yourself out there. Dating can be overwhelming, especially with post COVID. There's so many changes that let's take some baby steps. Another thing I would, when I was thinking about this question, is explore your expectations around dating. Are you looking to have fun and just see what's out there, or are you looking to enter a committed relationship? This goes back to boundaries, right? Like that way you're able to clearly communicate that to the people that you're dating. If you're just wanting to have fun and just see what's out there, then that's important because there might be somebody out there that's wanting to be in a committed relationship or vice versa. But just being very clear with your boundaries and your intentions off the bat. My other thing I would bring up for this specific person is I'd be curious around any negative beliefs connected to relationships with them. Like, is there a fear of vulnerability? Is there a fear of abandonment, like fear of commitment, fear of loss of control? Because dating, like, you are literally putting yourself out there and it is so uncomfortable. So I would just see, like, is there any fears of connection, fear of rejection, so much that can maybe be processed through maybe therapy or through some sort of healing platform with a group of some sort. But really checking in, right? What is coming up for me personally as I'm getting ready to put myself out there and potentially share parts of myself that I haven't shared in a very long time.
So now let's say, once someone becomes more comfortable and, being vulnerable and being out there in the
Mhm.
dating world and they've, again, are now comfortable in a safe place with someone, what would you say makes a healthy or makes a relationship healthy?
So I think one of the things is, I think first and foremost is safety, is being able to identify what safety means to you. So that way you are able to communicate that to your partner or to whoever you're dating. I think a healthy relationship is also being able to. So I know there's a lot of people say, "Oh, we shouldn't be arguing," or so and so. But arguing is actually one of the healthiest things that you can do with somebody. It is because you get to see how you fight and you get to identify conflict resolution. So if I get a couple in my session that and we don't fight, I'm like, okay, we have an issue here. It's because we're avoiders and we don't talk about it. So I would say, what does safety look like? And are you able to clearly communicate that to your partner? And what does conflict resolution look like in the relationship? And are we able to address some of those uncomfortable conversations? I feel like there's a need for being able to create a safe space for each other where we can not judge one another. We're open. We might not agree with everything, but can we provide an unconditional space where we can talk about these things? And another thing would be just going to go back to communication. Like, Are we communicating? Are we talking? And talking doesn't even just mean talking, like communicating means physical intimacy. Like, what do our nonverbals look like in our relationship? Because that all translates into trust, safety, commitment. So, these are all some of like the key points. We can obviously dive deeper into this, but I would say those are some of the key elements of what a healthy relationship is.
I like that you ended on communication because in listening to you answer these questions, it's kind of made me wonder like what are some traits, I guess, of a healthy communicator, like verbal communication in this in this question.
Yes, I think that being able to use I statements. So, and I know it can be very hard, but I feel disrespected when you say this, or I feel supported when you do this. And unhealthy can be like, well, you did this, and now I'm mad, and now I hate you, and go down a rabbit hole. But I think really being able to come back and hold ourselves accountable and being able to verbalize that. And that is easier said than done. Really. Like I'm in session with clients and it sounds like robotic, but it's because it wasn't taught to us. We're not always taught these skills, right? Like, oh, let's talk about our feelings and let's talk about them in this way.
Mhm.
Okay, I'm really big on I feel statement. I love an I feel statement.
Oh,
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
feel I noticed this, or those are awesome things that great communication skills.
Depending on how I'm saying it, though, I notice this can come out kind of hostile. I try to like watch my tone though.
Tone also, yes.
Okay,
Tone matters.
it does, yeah. So, in your practice in dealing with couples, what are some of the most common mistakes that you see people making in relationships? Like maybe you have two people who truly do want to have a successful relationship, but they're having
Mhm.
some trouble getting there.
So I feel one of the things that I spoke on a recent podcast, my recent podcast with my colleague was, I think that couples have this expectation that you're going to agree on everything. That you are going to agree that we sometimes feel we come in with this expectation that we want to kind of date ourselves. Eh, really, but honestly, like 90% of argument, like you're not gonna come to an agreement. Like we have two different backgrounds, we come from different upbringings. Like we're not gonna agree on everything. We're probably not gonna like half of the things that our partner likes. So I think learning to compromise and learning to fight, because I think that's the bit. I keep coming back to fighting because there's always this like negative like feeling that comes up with clients when they're like, well, you want us to fight? Like, really? I'm like, yes. Jay Shetty actually was the one that I listened to one of his episodes, and he's like a big relationship and love guru out there. And he talks about, he's like, everybody says, give yourself your partner a kiss in the morning and a kiss at night, and you never go to sleep angry. I actually disagree with that. Yeah, I feel like sometimes that's us telling our partner to suppress their feelings and that they're minimizing them versus, hey, maybe my partner needs a day to come to terms with it and then we can revisit that. But that's the conflict resolution, right? Like how are we fighting and how are we coming back
Back.
together to build trust and safety again?
I can tell you
Yeah.
that
And
Amanda and I are real big on give me
another
a minute,
thing.
I'll be back.
I
I
just
will
need
tell you when I'll be back.
we are going to come back to this, but I just need time. I just give me a moment here.
Yes, absolutely. So I think that's a big thing where, so I think expect to fight, expect to not agree, and conflict actually, if you do it right, you fight correctly, and you have good, healthy conflict resolution, you're going to grow closer to your partner because you're going to trust them more.
Okay, so I mean, you said that, and it makes me wonder. I have to ask, like, what is the right way to fight? What is the correct way to fight?
Ah, that's a loaded question, Christina. So I think the correct way to fight, I think, is once again is learning each other's boundaries, respecting each other's boundaries. If a partner says, I need 10 minutes to decompress, we don't push them. We honor that because you're modeling and you're in some way you're showing your partner like how much you really respect their space and what they're saying and what they're listening. So I think respecting boundaries, being able to once again using those I statements and holding ourselves accountable. So not only just pointing the finger, but being able to see where did we go wrong if there is something that we did also to contribute to the conflict and making sure you come back to the issue instead of like, it's 5 years later and we're going to address that infidelity.
Oh.
Or we're going to address
Oh.
that, whatever that may be,
Right.
because it happens. So I think make sure you come back and come to some sort of understanding. And what are our takeaways from this argument? Like, what did we learn from it? What don't we want to do anymore? Because we're human and we're going to fight ugly sometimes. So, what are we going to do different next time? How are we going to grow from this? And obviously, right, like cursing, no physical abuse, that's unhealthy. But I think these are some of the ways that we can start having healthier arguments with our partners or with friends. It doesn't even have to be relationships. So there's friends, family, right?
Oh, wow. Okay, interesting. Well, I guess it kind of does lead into our next question, though, because
Mhm.
you know, if you're fighting correctly, ideally you're having
Mhm.
a long-term relationship or you're
Mhm.
married. So before you even get to that step, though, I
Mhm.
think our generation is really examining more and more like, should I get married? Like, is a long-term relationship something that I want to be in
Mhm.
or like have in my life? So what types of questions should you ask yourself before
Mm.
committing to a partner, before committing to get into a marriage with somebody?
So I think some of the main questions. So, and I really like this question because it takes me back to like premarital counseling sometimes. I know that this is only just marriage, but relationships. I think the three main topics that couples need to really talk about or even address while dating is sex, children, and finances. Those are the top reasons why people are getting divorced because we're not talking about it. Whether we want to have children or whether we don't. How are we spending our money? Do we have a lot of debt? Are we reckless? Are we penny pinchers? Like, do we have a low sex drive? Do we have a high sex drive? Do I not like sex at all? So these are all different things that come up. And I think these are the topics that we need to be talking about because these are the issues that I start seeing couples when they're already married coming to like, I didn't know she didn't want kids.
Mm.
And I'm like, well, when did you talk about this?
Yeah.
I want five, she doesn't want any. So I feel like these are topics that are coming up in therapy.
Oh, wow. I find that
Yeah.
really interesting because I feel like, well, at least when I was dating, and I'm sure Amanda talked to Constantine about this before they like really, really committed to each other. Yeah, I would always be like, are you a kids person? Like, do you
Yeah.
want to have kids? So I find
Uh-huh.
that so interesting that people, um, I guess kind of wouldn't talk about that beforehand.
Yes. No, I'm telling you, the amount of people that cut to like, yeah, that's one of the reasons why a lot of people break up
That's
or
amazing.
end their really, yeah.
That's shocking.
Or like even problem solving like infertility. Like what would happen if we can't have children? Can we problem solve that? Like, how would you handle
Mhm.
that if I can't get pregnant? Or like, what are our options? Are we open to adoption? Are we open to fostering? Like, but once again, we're not always taught to have these. It could be sometimes black or white that we don't go in deeper. And I don't know if that's something you guys have heard or have, maybe seen with friends or even just family.
I think like where it kind of resonated for me was with the sex topic. I
Uh-huh.
never honestly kind of would have thought about that's a thing to like talk about before you like commit to somebody or like get
Oh,
in a
yeah.
relationship with somebody. I mean, it makes sense, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah.
So two people have two different like sex
Sex
drives, and it is
drives.
going to cause issues in your relationship.
Or even like if you for clients or people in general who have different sexual needs or fantasies, like you enter a committed relationship or marry, and you don't realize that your partner is into this type of sexual fantasy, and then you're like, what in the world? And then there's sometimes infidelity that
Right.
may come up because they're seeking that need elsewhere, or um you've seen one, like porn is a big one, like one partner loves it, the other doesn't.
Mhm.
And like there's not a deeper conversation around why, right? So these are like really deep and intimate conversations, but they're uncomfortable. Sex is
Definitely.
uncomfortable.
It reaches a
Finance is
new like vulnerability, and that's like a new door you're opening to being vulnerable. Like,
mm-hmm.
okay, we've checked off all of these other things. Now we're entering like sex. Would you like, I don't know. I'm into this. I'm not into this. Like that's a whole different level of being vulnerable and
Well,
just
even
trusting your
deeper.
and deeper and trusting your partner.
Well, even deeper in that, what if your partner has sexual trauma?
Right.
And maybe that partner has never talked about it. And you're maybe the first person that they've talked about. So there's certain things that can be a little bit more triggering to them. So how do we then create a safe space? I always say sex is a form of communication. It's the most intimate, the most connected you can be with somebody because they see you for who you are 100%. And I feel like if you look at a couple's communication style, it's going to resemble in the bedroom. Like if they're really intimate and they're really talking and they're verbal and they're nonverbal, it's most likely going to translate in the bedroom. But if they're disconnected, they're not really talking about these issues, they're not arguing, chances are they're maybe not as sexually intimate as, or are maybe they're not even having sex at that point. So there's just so much. So, but those are the three biggest ones that I would be talking about. And I guess maybe in our Latinx community, maybe family, right? Like
Yeah.
family. I have a dear friend of mine. She's dating now, and she's like, I would love somebody who can speak Spanish, because I want them to be able to communicate with my family. So I was like, oh, that's interesting. Cause some people may be like, oh, it's okay. Like, as long as I connect with them, because we talk about, interracial couples
Mhm.
dating, biracial couples dating. So family might be a topic as well.
Yeah, that does really make sense. And I'm really glad that you brought that up because when we think about our family, like we want somebody who kind of understands like the connections that we have to our family and our responsibilities to our family. And I know sometimes it can get lost with partners of different cultures, like can't really understand why our connection and our responsibility to our
Mm-hmm.
family is so heavy. And then it's like kind of tough to explain that because you're like, well, that's my mom. And they're like, yeah, well, I don't really talk to my mom like that. And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, but I do. And I don't really know how else to explain it. Then like, that's my mom.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I think that's if we're diving into like biracial couples. So that is another thing. Like, how do you plan to raise your children? Well, it goes back to children, right? Like, how do you plan to raise your children? Religious background, spiritual background, like all these different things adds another level of complexity because your partner may not be Catholic, but they're Muslim. So how are we going to navigate that, right? How are we going to raise the kiddos when we have two different backgrounds? So yes, there's just so much that goes into this.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Thank you to the listener that submitted this question. There's so much here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, okay, so our last question that we have, how can you tell if a relationship is over? How do you know when it's actually time to end the relationship and you are not just quitting or running away?
So when you feel like you've done everything that you could, I feel like if you're in a committed relationship, you've done the therapy, you've done the couples work, you've done, if you're religious, you've done the religious counseling, you've given it your all, and nothing's changing. I think that's a big sign. I also feel that if you feel like you're working harder than your partner to change or to make the relationship work, a relationship is two people, right? You both need to be working at it. together. Another thing is, this one's, I feel like when we think about breakups, um, and I mentioned it here, when I was writing it down, where I think sometimes we think that a relationship has to have this dramatic ending sometimes too. Like it's, oh, you know what, they cheated, or like something crazy happened. Well, and sometimes maybe we've just outgrown each other. And maybe that's all it is, that we met when we were younger and our values no longer are in alignment and we want different things. And that's okay too. Sometimes it doesn't have to be this crazy breakup story or this crazy ending where it's just like, I wish you well. I see you more as a friend now than, romantic partner. So I think that that's a big one, as to kind of to add to that question. And of course, if it is getting abusive, right, there is a level of, I'm not feeling safe here anymore. I'm okay. I need to leave. So I think it just depends on the different layers of the, or the different level of relationship you're in. Does that make sense, or does that, I don't know, does that
No, it
Yeah.
resonate at
Yeah.
definitely
all?
It
does.
does. Yeah.
Yeah. I think because something I hear, this question made me think about when I've had conversations with my friends about their relationship. Sometimes it has come
Mhm.
like, well, he hasn't really like done anything, or they haven't really done anything. It's just, I don't know, like the there is not there anymore is one thing that, I've talked about with people. And then another thing that I hear sometimes is, okay, but I also have, like, to bring it back to kind of our beginning,
Yeah.
I have this trauma and this stuff that I am trying to deal with, and I don't know if that's what's making me run, or if it's truly like a situation where, we are done. This has run its course, where it's over.
Mhm.
Yes. And one of the things I was looking at, and this might be controversial, but it's really not our job to change anyone. It can be kind of selfish to actually want maybe somebody to change, especially if our partner has been very upfront with us where, hey, I'm happy with how I am. Like, I really don't see why you want me to change X, Y, and Z. I also feel like that's also a sign where, like, is there some of my own codependency coming up where I want to change this person? Going back to that previous question of like the generational trauma and how is it reenacting in our relationship? That's another one, this need to change, need to get a need fulfilled because it wasn't met in our family or in our relationship with our parents. So, I know that I went around in circles, but I think that going back to, it's like also a personal choice. Sometimes we just don't no longer want to be in it. And that's okay too. And that it's time to go.
I agree. It is definitely a personal choice, and I, I hope I hope you guys have gotten something out of this. I think y'all have, because y'all submitted a lot of these questions. So thank you so much,
Mm.
Elizabeth, for being
Yeah.
on and answering these questions for our listeners and for us. This has been really fun, and I think we might have to do it again sometime.
Yes. Please come back. Yeah. Come back again. Yes. We'll have, I'm sure we'll have new questions, and listeners will give you even harder questions here to answer, and challenging ones. But yes, thank you so much.
No, absolutely. Thank you for having me. Like, these were some really great questions. I can tell that, your listeners are really, motivated to work on their relationships on some level. So, thank you for also providing space for me to share a little bit of what, brings me joy. And I love relationships and love to share about all about them.
Yeah, and before we let you go, do you want to plug your podcast one more time? Remind everybody so they can go check it out.
Yes, so Cafecito y Calidad podcast. You can find us on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and you can also find our videos on my website, calidadholisticwellness.com. We have a full-on podcast page where you can also submit if you are interested in being a guest. You can submit a form, but our podcast is still going. We really enjoy having these great conversations with our community. So I'll have to have you both on mine. next time. I would love to have you both.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank
Of
you.
course.
And of course, we will be sure to put all that information for y'all in our show notes. So be sure to check that out.
We usually end the episode, we close the episode out by asking our guests, or even Christina asking me, what's making you glow this week? So, Liz, what is making you glow this week?
Oh, I love that question. You know, I think it's thinking my son's going to turn 3. And so I'm in the planning stages of his birthday. So Legoland or a zoo, right? So I think that's one of the things that's making me glow is just thinking about seeing how happy this little kid is. Like I feel like I'm not the perfect mom, but seeing the way that I'm like actively working on healing and being able to celebrate another year with him, I'm like brings me so much joy. Like I can feel it in my face. So
We
my
can see
little,
it. We can
I
see
love
you
him so much.
glow.
I love him so much. So he's helping me glow this week.
Aw.
Happy almost birthday to him.
Yes.
Pisces season. He's a little Pisces.
Love it.
We do love Pisces on this show.
Love it.
Oh.
We hope you guys have so much fun at his birthday party.
Yes.
Oh, thank
and
you.
I'm
I
sure
think it's Legoland.
and I'm
Love
sure he
that.
thinks you're the best mommy in the world.
Mhm.
Oh, sometimes. Oh, thank you. Thank you. I really appreciate it.
And Amanda, do you want to share what's making you glow this week?
What is making me glow this week? Oh, excited to celebrate a friend's birthday at the end of the week. That's tech support Thomas.
Yes.
So excited to celebrate
Yay.
tech support Thomas this weekend.
Thomas is our resident Pisces. That is also what is making me glow this week. He is turning the big 3-0, you guys. So if you want to send him a happy
Wow.
birthday, be sure to do that.
Happy birthday, Thomas. Another Pisces.
Yeah.
Oh,
Okay, Elizabeth, thank you so
of
much.
course.
Thank you
No, of
very much.
course. Keep doing what you both are doing, making a big difference in our community, having these hard conversations.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And lastly, before we let you guys go, please do not forget we are 20 episodes in, which means there are only 10 episodes left of this season. Be sure to send us your submissions for our season finale. You can do that with the Google Forms link in our show notes. And the weekly question box will go up. I just didn't want to get it mixed up with the question box that we put up for Elizabeth leading to this episode. But yes, we are still doing it. And of course, we want to hear your Am I the Asshole stories. We want you to share your secrets. If you have a problem you need solved.
Yes, I feel like oh dang, that's what I forgot to tell her. I just wanted to say that there was something that resonated with me. She called herself a healer, and I can see it. I can see why she calls herself a healer. But sorry, continue, Christina. Ugh.
So, yes, be sure to submit those. We want to hear your stories. We want to answer whether you're an asshole or not. We want to hear your secrets. Anonymous submissions are welcome. We're very excited. We have some good ones so far, and we can't wait to share the episode with you guys.
Yes, submit those questions and then make sure you tune in so you can listen to, I don't want to say it's cheesemate, but listen, grab your cafecito, grab your tea, grab your glass of wine and join us for the last episode for all of these questions.
And remember, you can catch us every Wednesday wherever podcasts are available and here on YouTube. Be sure to spread the word, share the episode, leave us 5 stars on Spotify, and obviously leave us a glowing review on Apple Podcast, and we will love you forever.
Yes, and continue to follow us on Glowing Up Latina for important announcements. All of our posts are episode-related posts, and you can also send us your questions, even for the last episode, via email at glowinguplatina@gmail.com.
And until next week, keep glowing, mija.
Bye.
Bye.